Hi, friends. Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, and we've got a great book to look at today. This is a reprint of the original Pinocchio. So it's kind of different than the original, and I thought this would be a lot of fun. And this says it's a reprint from the 1939 original Pinocchio book. And so let's look at it together. This will be fun. Ooh, look at the opening page right there. Beautiful pictures. One beautiful night, long ago, a weary traveler named Jiminy Cricket slipped in under the door of a little house and hid in a warm corner of the hearth. He was in the shop of a wood carver named Geppetto. The old man was still at work. He was making a puppet, the figure of a little boy. It was small and round and cute, but with a long and pointed nose, such as you've never seen on a little boy. The old man was very lonely. He had a black kitten named Figaro and a pet goldfish called Cleo. All of the village children loved the kindly white-haired old man, but none of these things can take the place of a real little boy of your own. Carefully, old Geppetto painted a little turned-down mouth on the puppet's face. Figaro and Cleo frowned and shook their heads, so Geppetto made him smiling one instead. Geppetto smiled too and said, "What shall I call you, little wooden head? I know, Pinocchio." So there's Geppetto and Pinocchio. Clocks began to strike in all parts of the shop. It was time for bed. Geppetto blew out his candle and went to the window. He saw the wishing star and said, "How I wish my puppet were a real boy." Then he got into bed and went to sleep. Figaro and Cleo were asleep too, but Jiminy Cricket was thinking how sad it was that, okay, let's find out. Jiminy Cricket was thinking how sad it was that the poor old man's wish could not come true. Suddenly, he saw a strange light. It was the evening star floating down and entering Geppetto's window. In the center of its soft light was the blue fairy, who rewards people for their good deeds. "Good Geppetto," she said softly, "you have given so much happiness to others. You deserve to have your wish come true." She touched the little wooden puppet and he blinked his eyes and moved his hands and feet. Wow. "I'm a real boy," cried Pinocchio joyfully. "No," said the blue fairy, "all I have done is to give you life. You must prove yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish. Be a good son to Geppetto, and someday you will find yourself a real boy. Learn right from wrong." "How will I know that?" interrupted Pinocchio. "Let your conscience help you," she said. And as Jiminy Cricket appeared just then, Pinocchio asked him, "Are you my conscience?" See Jiminy Cricket right there? The blue fairy seemed to think that Pinocchio might need some help, so she appointed Jiminy Cricket to be his guide. She promised Jiminy a gold badge if he did his work well. You can imagine Geppetto's delight the next morning on finding Pinocchio had come to life. He would have liked to talk to him all day, but school bells were ringing, and the first thing to do was to send Pinocchio to school like the other boys. Pinocchio started off filled with good intention, his books in his hand and Jiminy Cricket at his heels. Alas, he had not gone very far before he met two sly schemers, a fox named J. Worthington Foulfellow, and a cat named Gideon. They saw how they could make some money, so they stopped Pinocchio as he came near and told him how handsome he was and what a great success he would be as an actor. Poor little puppet. Oh, there they are right there. Poor little puppet. He liked their words of flattery so well that he went with them in spite of Jiminy's strong protest. School could come later, he thought. The fox and the cat sold him to Stromboli, the puppet master who was eager to own a puppet who could walk and talk. Oh, right there we see Stromboli. All day, Pinocchio had a fine time and was pleased by the cheers of the people. But at night, he wanted to see Papa Geppetto. Instead, he was locked in a bird cage while Stromboli moved him in a caravan. Pinocchio cried a little. Jiminy Cricket tried to help him, but they were both very sad until the Blue Fairy appeared. She asked Pinocchio how he came to be in such a bad fix. Pinocchio was ashamed to tell the truth, so he made up a story about two monsters with green eyes who had captured him. His nose grew longer and longer. Green leaves burst forth, and Pinocchio could see a bird's nest in the branches. Hastily, he admitted that everything he had said was a lie. His nose took its own shape again, and the fairy, who saw that he was really sorry, opened the cage and let him go. So there's Pinocchio right there. I'm going home, said Pinocchio. I've learned my lesson now. So Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket started down the road towards home. They did not know that Fox and the cat had met a coachman who had promised them a bag of gold if they would find boys for him to take to Pleasure Island. So the two schemers set out to look for some boys who were not thinking well enough and would go with them. As luck would have it, the first person they met was Pinocchio, and it was easy to persuade him to go to Pleasure Island. Of course, they did not tell him that anyone who went to Pleasure Island, anyone that came to Pleasure Island never came back as a boy. Pinocchio's best friend on Pleasure Island was Lampwick, who was really the worst boy of the lot. He even taught Pinocchio to do bad things. Pinocchio and Jiminy escaped from the island just in time, for that's where naughty boys are turned into donkeys, and Pinocchio had already grown long ears and a tail. They made their way home to find Geppetto gone. Pinocchio sat on the doorstep and cried how he wished he had behaved himself. Just then, the Blue Fairy, disguised as a dove, brought them a letter from Geppetto. It told how he had set out to rescue Pinocchio from Pleasure Island, how he had been swallowed by Monstro, the whale, and how he and his pets were living inside the whale's body. Bravely, Pinocchio and Jiminy set out to save Geppetto. At the water's edge, ... Let's find out. At the water's edge, Pinocchio tied a stone to his tail to make him sink. Then they dived into the water. Wherever they went, they asked about Monstro the whale, but all the fish were afraid. See him with all the fish right there? They would swim away when they heard the sound of his terrible name. Meanwhile, Geppetto had built a rough home inside the whale's body. Figaro and Cleo were with him. For food, Geppetto caught some fish that the whale had swallowed. Imagine his surprise when he saw a strange fish on his line that cried, "Father, is it really you?" The little puppet had been swallowed by the whale with a whole school of tuna. When Pinocchio found that Geppetto had built a raft, he thought of a plan for their escape. They built a fire inside the whale. Monstro began to grunt and cough. Suddenly he gave a tremendous sneeze. Out they shot on the raft into the sea. The furious whale plunged after them. He hit their frail raft, splitting it into 1,000 pieces. Desperately, they swam for their lives. At last, Geppetto could swim no farther. He begged to Pinocchio to leave him, but the brave puppet refused and managed to hold him up until they were washed through a hole in a reef onto a sheltered beach. After a time, Geppetto sat up and saw that his pets were safe, but Pinocchio lay motionlessly. Sorrowfully, Geppetto carried him to his workshop and laid him on the bench. Suddenly, a ray of starlight pierced the gloom, and a voice said, When you have proven yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish, you will be a real boy. Pinocchio stirred and sat up. At last he was a real boy. What a happy celebration they had that night. But Jiminy Cricket was the happiest of all, for on his lapel he wore a badge of shining gold. The end. That was a great book. That was Pinocchio. And that was different than the story I remember seeing. That was really fun to read. Well, I hope you have a great day today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, friends.